whereas the basketball world is still waiting and wondering, will Giannis Antetokounmpo officially out of the Milwaukee Bucks? We now know a list of teams that are out on trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, Jonathan Kuminga is pushed to the sidelines in Golden State with the Pelicans reportedly ready to swoop in there. And the Hawks' only untradeable asset, unfortunately, or untouchable asset, I should say, is apparently Jalen Johnson. But there is a caveat with that. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I want to start off talking about this. The Thunder, Rockets, and Spurs are reportedly will not be pursuing Giannis Antetokounmpo if he is made available in trades by the Milwaukee Bucks. And that's interesting. Right now, as I said right now, we do not know exactly what's going on with Milwaukee and Giannis, right? We've heard conflicting reports. We heard from Windhorst and others that, it's only a matter of time. We've heard that, at one point we heard that he could have already requested a trade to the New York Knicks that ended up falling through. But the question still remains on is what's going to happen with Giannis. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks are in a bad place right now. They're in a bad place as a franchise. Some may say that they're in one of the worst spots that they've been in after starting off the season looking like, okay, they're going to be decent. They're now 11-16 on the season. And while it only has them technically 4 games back of locking in a playoff, berth and stuff like that, like this is a team right now that just is listless. And, they have their issues as a franchise. And the Bucks just don't have it. And after, making the big move to go ahead and decide to waive and stretch Dame Lillard so that they can go after and pursue Miles Turner in free agency, it's just been really nothing since then. Over the last 5 games, the Milwaukee Bucks are 21st in defensive rating, 26 in offense, and they have a record of 2-3. You look at the last 10 games where they're 3-7, their offensive rating is 25th, whereas the defensive rating improves 1 spot by being 20th. This team is struggling right now. They're 6-14 in their last 20 on top of that. This is a Bucks team that is struggling. And it's unfortunate because, the Milwaukee wants to hold on to Giannis. They want to do something that's going to entice Giannis Antetokounmpo to stay. And like I've said before, me personally also view it that Giannis probably wants to stay there. Like Giannis is looking for a reason to stay with the Bucks, and he's begging for them to give them a reason. But unfortunately, it is what it is, right? Now, Giannis is already going to be out a number of weeks. They expect him to be out 4 weeks. That was announced on December 5th with his calf injury, which tons of calf injuries going on around the NBA. The question now comes to when he does come back from injury, what does this Milwaukee Bucks team look like? Where is this team at without Giannis Antetokounmpo? And it doesn't look like they're going to be in great place. AJ Green out, Taurean Prince out. Like, you have a lot of injuries on this roster to players, right? But on top of that, like, Giannis is probably looking at this team without him and wondering, hey, what am I doing? What really is, what can I accomplish here in Milwaukee? And if he is thinking that, is he going to be traded? And that's the question that you have there, right? Now, while the Thunder and the Rockets have more than enough assets to trade for the Milwaukee Bucks, hearing now that they're out, that takes names off the table, right? Hearing that the Spurs, too, with the Spurs and them having a nice young roster and nucleus that, hey, they just beat the Thunder. I'm sure they're riding high on what their young core could look like and what they can accomplish this season before they want to push all their chips in on making a move for like a Giannis-type player. Now, I will say this. If the Spurs do give up some of their depth and some of their youth, a player like Giannis is the only move that they should be targeting, a move of that magnitude to help propel them, but they may not even need that, right? If Wemby's going to be healthy, are they going to be good enough without it? Like, and that's the question that they have to ask themselves, and that's what they're going to try to discover over the season. So now, to me, that puts 2 teams that I would say that are probably at the forefront of trading for Giannis, and that's the Miami Heat, who we've already heard, Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra, they've been wanting Giannis for a while, kind of preparing for that if they need to, and the New York Knicks, who we've already heard that Giannis, may have had some talks with or whatever in the offseason with his agent and the Milwaukee Bucks or whatever. So we'll see what happens there. But, maybe an outside chance like the Detroit Pistons. But then again, are the Milwaukee Bucks going to want to trade Giannis, not just into the Eastern Conference, but in their own division, in the Central Division? That's a huge question to raise there. And while it seems like a petty thing, teams do look at that and they do consider that as well. So we'll end up seeing what's going to happen with Giannis. But as it stands right now, those teams are out on Giannis, and we shall see what the future is going to hold. But let's move on from that to another team. The Atlanta Hawks are a team that is expected to be active this year at the trade deadline, right? And reportedly, the Atlanta Hawks have let rival teams know that Jalen Johnson is considered virtually untouchable in trade talks, and that makes sense. Jalen Johnson had a breakout year last year, even with struggling with injury, and then you look at had a healthy season so far, and look at what he's taken his game to a new level on. That's really good. His average career highs nearly across the board in his fifth season. 23 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, 8 assists per game as well. He's also shooting 53, 39, and 81 splits on the year, getting close to that 50, 40, 90. Jalen Johnson is a player that you don't make a move to. You try to add to what you have in Jalen Johnson and what he's doing there, right? And reportedly that they also highly value the pick that they acquired from the New Orleans Pelicans, which is an unprotected pick in the 2026 draft, which is supposed to be a deep draft, right? So that's where you have in that one too. So where it stands right now, the Atlanta Hawks, a lot has been made about Trae Young and his future fit there and things like that. And I think those are still questions there. And that may be the move that the Atlanta Hawks do make, but they're not going to move Jalen Johnson. We've heard some things as far as just rumors outside of, you could include Jalen Johnson for X player. The Atlanta Hawks aren't going to do that. And I think that that's the right decision for them. You hold on to your young player that's grown and developed in your system. This is part of the reason why you could be willing to move on from Trae Young is because of what Jalen Johnson has done in the player. He is their focal point player now going forward into the future. At 23 years old, that is what he is. You only make a move for him if you're trading for a true superstar at that point in time. And no, I'm not saying Jalen Johnson is a superstar yet, but that's the kind of trajectory it looks like that he's on. And you don't do that just for a marginal move. He's what you're building your team around going forward. When you look at how you're trying to get players to fit, you want them to fit. You want them to play off Jalen Johnson. That's what you want him to do, especially at that power forward position, averaging over 8 assists. That gives so much flexibility in how you run your scheme and how you run your system. So therefore, yeah, Jalen should be untouchable, and they should value him high. And he should only be moved if you're truly getting something that transcends your team to a whole new level. And I don't know if that move's coming for the Hawks. So hearing that, and I wonder now, is this make it more or less likely for Trae Young to be moved? That's the question now. With the Hawks identifying that Jalen Johnson is basically untouchable, does that make it more or less likely? How do they view now that fit with Trae being able to play off ball more with Jalen Johnson and what he's been able to do with that offense? They're 15-12 on the season, right? So, hopefully Trae Young's able to come back sooner rather than later so they can have a little bit more of a sample size leading to the trade deadline before they need to make a decision. But best believe that Jalen is a guy that should be untouchable. Now, we have heard that maybe Kristaps could be moved as well, but now he's out with injury. He's going to miss 2 weeks of time also, and we don't know exactly what that's going to have as well. But with Trae Young returning to practice, I believe this week is when they're expecting him to return to practice. We'll see what happens with Trae once he gets out there on the court. Maybe he comes back. Maybe he's looked at this team play. Maybe he fits in more seamlessly, and then they can take it and run off to the mountaintops with it. But otherwise, I'm still looking at the Hawks to trade Trae Young at some point this offseason. I think that makes sense for where they are as a team. It makes sense for what they're building towards, and it makes sense for the youth movement in that team as well. Trae Young is a player that, albeit flawed, right, but you probably don't want to re-sign him at the contract that it was reported that he wants when you have a young player that's growing like a Jalen Johnson. So I think these are all smart moves by this team, and we'll just see where it takes them going forward and going next. But let me know what you guys think on that. Hearing that Jalen Johnson is virtually untouchable, according to the Atlanta Hawks, do you think that makes it more or less likely that Trae Young is going to be moved at some point this season, especially with him having an opt-out? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. All right, let's move on from that to Jonathan Kuminga, which is always a hot-button topic, right? The New Orleans Pelicans, while having a bright spot in both Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, right, they still sit at 5-22 on the season, and they are a team that is pretty far off, right? Now, we know that Zion, if he's ever fully healthy, may be able to change that quite considerably for that team. But with the Pelicans not owning their own 2026 first-round pick, thanks to the trade that sent, how they acquired Derek Queen, now there's some thoughts that maybe, just maybe, they can be involved in a Jonathan Kuminga trade. This one comes from Sam Amick, who says this. For quite some time now, the Warriors have been open about their desire to acquire the Pelicans' Trey Murphy III. But if they're going to use Jonathan Kuminga to do that, then it would be helpful to know how, if at all, the Pelicans value the Warriors' 23-year-old forward for the time being. The feedback is mixed on that front. This tis the season for smoke screens after all. So, even Sam Amick throwing some doubt on if this could be legitimate or not. But then we also heard something from Brett Siegel, who said this: the past 6 weeks have not been kind when it comes to Kuminga's value. After the first 6 games of the season, when Kuminga was receiving rave reviews, he has returned to the roller coaster existence that embodied the vast majority of his first 4 seasons. So when you pair those two things, the Pelicans are looking to acquire players, right? And they're looking to recoup some type of value after giving up that pick. The Warriors are somebody who values Trey Murphy III. And so could it lead to those two sides doing business? Now, I don't think that the Pelicans get better by trading Trey Murphy for Jonathan Kuminga personally, but it is a player to where he only has one, it has a team option for next season, so they can get out of that deal if they do want to gain some more flexibility. You pair that with also being able to get out of Zion's deal every summer, and then they're working with some financial flexibility. Not much talent on the roster, but they're working with some financial flexibility if that is their goal in that case. And maybe there. And we know that the Warriors are looking for some help for with Steph. One thing that's been clear over this past weekend is Steph needs some help. And whether that's Trey Murphy III or whatever, we'll see. But with Jonathan Kuminga stacking DNPs right now at this point in the season, and over the last couple of weeks, everybody expected Kuminga to be moved. I said it when he signed that deal. I expected Kuminga to be moved. I think that was a trade that eliminated that base year compensation in signing trades where only half his salary matched, and that's just business. So now the question comes about, as this trade deadline approaches, Jonathan Kuminga can't be traded till January 15th, so we still have another month of maybe this roller coaster when it comes to Kuminga. Is that going to be something that happens? And I guess we shall see what's going to go down there. But overall, the Warriors are smart to try to find some type of value with Jonathan Kuminga, and we'll see where that leads them. Last topic of the day, and this is a little bit later news. Evan Mobley is going to be out 2 to 4 weeks with another calf strain around the NBA. This is like the most devastating injury right now in the NBA is calf strains, because teams are just so much more aware now of what that means to their to possible Achilles injuries. Teams are just playing it really, really safe when it comes down to calf strains. But this is a team in the Cleveland Cavaliers that's struggling. They're 15-12 on the season, which isn't necessarily a horrible record. But when you look at them coming into the season expected to be championship contenders, there's just no doubt that it'll leave something. Now, for what it's worth, the numbers aren't that bad. They're 9th in defensive rating, 11th in offensive rating. They have the 11th best net rating in the game of basketball. But then when you start breaking it down and looking at the last couple, last 5 games, they're 17th in net rating, 22nd in offensive rating, 12th in defensive rating, right? So they're 2-3 in their last 5, 6-4 in their last 10, 11-9 in their last 20. This is a team that you can't call them terrible because they're not that, but they're definitely failing to meet the expectations that they had for their team coming into the season. And we always know what a dangerous spot that is. When the Cavs decided to double down and lock in most of their core to extensions, it was a sign of confidence in what they could have, right? Or you could look at it and say, well, let's lock these guys in now. If we do need to blow it up, because they will have lengthy contracts, we got to get something substantial back for them, and they can't just leave us for nothing sooner rather than later, right? This is a team that's dealt with injuries all throughout the course of the season. Have Evan Mobley now here that's injured. You've had other players miss time over that time period as well that have missed time for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And DeAndre Hunter, Larry Nance, Darius Garland's missed some time. So what does that mean for this team? And that we don't know. But I will say this. If the Cavs can't find a way to turn this around, and we've seen teams as good as the Cavs turn it around late, right? So there's fair reason to believe that it's not over yet. They shouldn't act like it's over yet. It's not done. They got time. But eventually you do run out of runway. And the Cavs have to ask themselves, how close are they to that point of running out of runway to really turn this around? Now, it's not even the end of December. Right now is not the time to feel that way. But when you look at what Evan Mobley has meant to them defensively, this was a season where I personally said if the Cavs are really going to be a championship team, Evan Mobley was going to have to make a big step and leap this year. And if that doesn't happen, as far as them being contenders for a championship, which heads are going to roll? Of course, Jared Allen is an easy trade chip to cash in on. Maybe Darius Garland and keeping Donovan Mitchell. It's all those type of questions that present themselves, and that's what they're going to have to try to figure out. But Evan Mobley is going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks. This is another hit for a Cavs team that just has not been able to catch their rhythm this season so far, and maybe they can catch it late. But that's my time for today, y'all. The trade deadline is coming, and things are getting real interesting around the league as we already expect come this time of the year. Make sure you guys like the video, hit the subscribe button as well. Leave your comments and takes down below. You can follow us everywhere at NBA Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBACentralPod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. And I catch you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.